Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.
Hello and welcome to a special presentation on CNBC TV18, the energy debates. The issues of energy sufficiency, energy scarcity and energy security have become critically important in the last few years. With global oil and gas prices becoming increasingly volatile, it has become imperative for India to create a policy framework that can ensure that its own oil and gas reserves are exploited for the benefit of the citizens of the country. Today's discussion will center around the idea of creating winning partnerships towards a more effective model for public-private partnerships in domestic oil and gas exploration and production. Let me start by introducing my panelists. On my extreme left, Dr. Sanjay Baru. Dr. Baru is the Director, Geoeconomics and Strategy at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. We have Dr. Rajiv Kumar. He's the Secretary General of FICCI. Mr. Shyam Saran is the Chairman, Research and Information Systems for Developing Countries. On my right, Mr. R.S. Sharma. He's the ex-chairman of ONGC. He has served as the chairman of ONGC Limited from May 2006 to January 2011. On my extreme right, Deepak Mahurkar, Director, Leader, Oil and Gas Industry Practice, PricewaterhouseCoopers, India. We have one more panelist who's not with us today, but you will see on the show, Jahangir Aziz, the Chief Economist of JP Morgan in India. Right, with an introduction, let me dive into the discussion straight away, and let me start with Dr. Sanjay Baru. Dr. Baru, I'll ask you a simple question. Has the policy in India for too long been focused on importing and securing import lines rather than domestic exploration for oil and gas?
Well, I think we have done domestic exploration to the extent possible. We have invested to the extent that was possible.
Okay.
But the fact is that for a long time, our focus was on imports. But I do believe that in the last decade, that focus has shifted.
You know, in general, for natural resources, India is one of the least explored geologies at the moment.
Across the board for natural resources?
Across the board. I mean,
okay.
This is for hydrocarbons, coal, gas, etc. Because I got the figure, somewhere that, we have explored up to, in general, about 22
to 25% is what I have.
22 to 25%. And, the depth that we've gone is much shallower than what current technologies permit. We have, in my view, been unable to attract enough exploration dollars in our country, both onshore and offshore. That's my impression.
And in your view, it should be a big priority for the government and for private industry?
It should be a huge priority because I think there are enough resources to be now, identified and exploited in the country.
Mr. Sharma, let me ask you another simple question to open the debate. There's almost complete agreement across the board that oil and gas is one sector where everybody benefits. The citizens of the country benefit, the government benefits, PSUs benefit, private sector benefits, everybody benefits.
Exactly.
Why then are we at such a level of exploration, 22 to 25%? Why can't we push fast and strong on this issue?
I wish, Suresh, we could. Firstly, I wholeheartedly support what Dr. Rajiv Kumar said.
Okay.
As of now, I'll speak, when we talk of the energy, 93% of India's primary energy basket is of fossil fuels.
Okay.
51% coal and about 42% this oil and gas. In all these areas, I find the efforts for exploiting of the domestic resources is way behind it should be. 80% of the sedimentary basins of India are either underexplored or not explored at all.
Okay.
Precisely, I said, I'm very specific, 80% are underexplored or not explored.
Okay.
This is a business. Oil and gas exploration is a business, unlike any other business activity, where it's a highly risk capital involved. We call in this business is that inputs are deterministic, outputs are probabilistic.
Okay.
Thing is, to get that kind of investments, the regime needs to give huge incentives for the investments.
Okay.
That unfortunately has not been happening.
Okay.
I feel the domestic efforts are lagging way behind.
Okay. Let me go to Mr. Shyam Saran with that question. I'm going to come to Deepak Mahurkar after that. Mr. Saran, we have inputs that are deterministic and expensive and variable based on global demand and supply, and output that is probabilistic and uncertain. The case is ripe for foreign investment, for private money, for exploratory risk capital to take part in this industry. Why is the regime not doing more to facilitate public-private partnerships to bring in more private money into this area?
Private money, or for that matter, foreign capital, will only come in if there is a prospect of reasonable return.
Okay.
If you do not create a regulatory or an incentive regime which gives the prospect for adequate return,
okay,
why should anybody take the risk that we want them to?
Okay.
You have currently a situation where, for example, with respect to oil, if the international price of oil today is over $100 per barrel, the price which ONGC gets for the oil that it sells to, for example, Indian Oil or to any of the upstream units is roughly less than half.
Okay.
You know, because the government insists that there should be a large discount given.
Okay.
Now, if you have administrative price mechanism which does not take into account the need for ensuring that there should be adequate return, then obviously expectation that foreign capital will come in or Indian private capital will invest, I think is a pipe dream.
All right. Deepak, in spite of all these concerns, we have seen Indian companies invest in oil and gas production and exploration. We have seen foreign players also come in. In your view, what has been their experience of this regime, of this complexities? How have companies navigated this complexity?
Well, that's an interesting question. We have traveled about 12 years since the time we introduced new exploration licensing policy. It came as a fresh breath somewhere around 19. A new regime had to be opened called as NELP. At that time, every effort was made to make the above-the-ground environment for exploration production companies to be able to come to India with sufficient interest, and it got acknowledged in the kind of response NELP got. Over a period of time, NELP was brought in most importantly to ensure that the underground risks of investors are kind of addressed too by collecting more than sufficient information about what's underneath and carrying out exploration and making that data available to the investors. Over these 12 years, what we now observe is that not only does the underground risk remain as it is, except for few excellent discoveries that we have had, but also the above ground environment has become a worry for the investors. In 1999-2000, it was excellent. Almost everyone and every write-up that we see of those days says that above the ground, India is one of the best regimes. Can we see that today?
Prior to this discussion, we spoke to Jahangir Aziz, Chief Economist at JP Morgan, on the government's role in facilitating PPPs. Here's what he had to say.
Clearly, the government has made significant progress by bringing in private players into it. I mean, if you look at the oil and natural gas situation today versus, let's say, 10 years back, there's a huge difference. And in places like, for example, shale gas, which is one area where the entire world is looking towards, shale gas and shale oil both looking towards, you really need private players there. I think given, despite this progress that has taken place, I think there are still questions remaining about the manner in which countries' resources are being priced. I mean, this is a serious question that has come up in various places, not just in oil and gas. It's come up in 2G, it's come up in 3G, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's one area where people are looking towards, that in the future, prospectively, when we do allow public-private partnership, how is our own natural resources being priced? May that be in mining, hydroelectricity, whatever it is. But in the case of oil and gas, it's important. I think that's one area where I think there's still certain degree of skepticism, because there needs to be much greater clarity and there needs to be much greater agreement on what is the right contract that the government, on the behalf of the citizens of the country, are doing with this public-private partnership.
On that note, it's time to take a quick break. You're watching the energy debates. We're discussing the oil and gas sector on CNBC TV18.